JJ Racaza, one of the finest shooters in the world, and we've been picking his brain for some little tips and tricks to make us mortal shooters better. And I want to talk about sighting. So you've got this badass Beretta 92X. You guys know I love the Beretta pistolas. And you've got fibers up front and irons in the rear.
Yep.
Which is what you're competing with right now?
Yep.
So what division is this?
This is called production division. This is just out of the box type stuff where and all this stuff is just plain. It's iron sights. There's no other frill to it. You can do some work with the trigger, but I don't. Obviously, you can see I haven't had the gun very long. I have one gun that I constantly dry fire. This is just one of those, like I'll reload if I need to. So it does not beat up at all.
Talking irons, people have all of these little cute phrases like we talked earlier about grip. High and tight, good, do that. Sights, you know, equal height, equal light, let's go. What's your spiel on sighting?
It really depended on the target that I'm shooting at. Whenever I bring the gun up, it's according to the type of target I got. If it's a target that it requires some sort of accuracy, then I have to line up my sights a little bit more. But if it's a sights that require just a little bit more speed, I use a lot less sights, meaning it's just a blurry sight picture and I'm a lot more target focused. So it's all dependent on per shooter, and your skill set will dictate on how far you can get away with certain things. The more accuracy it requires for me to shoot the target, let's say a low percentage target, the more information I need from the gun, meaning how the sights are leveling out, how the front and the rear is leveling out with each other, and how my trigger is now feeling before I break that shot. The less accuracy is required, as more speed becomes more priority, the less I worry about the trigger, the less I worry about the sights, and now I'm working more on just gripping the gun, pointing the gun in the general direction, talking about basically just margin of error. But with that said, it's very rare for me to shoot a perfect sight picture. I shoot what's called good enough sight picture at almost any distance, unless I'm required to shoot things past 35 yards. Anything within that, it's just good enough, and I kind of know what's good enough at this distances depending on what it is. So the saying of equal light, equal height, not necessarily is always true, because I don't always shoot with that. 99% of my shots are not perfect.
How'd you arrive at 35 yards? Is that what you found?
Yeah.
For you, you needed to start to pay closer attention to things?
Yes. So for me, and I train a lot within 30 yards and 30 and 25 yards. During my training sessions are averaging at about 18 yards and 30 yards. I don't necessarily get closer than that. That's where I find is where my breaking points are and my weaknesses. So I hammer that a lot. And when I get to 35 yards, that's when I need to get my sights perfect a little bit more, meaning I need to pay attention to the height of the gun, not necessarily the light in between them. I just need to bring that down a little bit more in regards to the sights. The light on the sides, I'm not really caring too much. I know if I can just bring the sights, my eyes will recognize just the equal sights of the levelness, the level of the front sight with the rear sight is the only thing I'm really worrying about. The light in the side just kind of happens automatically.
How does it happen automatically? Is it because you've checked it over the time enough and developed a subconscious visual of what that looks like? So how does somebody develop that? Is it just a confirmation over time they build that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just dry firing. You constantly point the gun, and every time you point the gun, you know, and initially when you're new, you're working on just making sure that the sights and everything's perfect. So you're constantly doing right reps, correct reps, and then eventually you end up doing those enough where you stop thinking about you stop looking at the side to side, because that doesn't really matter too much in regards to your shooting. A lot of it matters more in regards to how high the rear sight is hanging out versus the front sight and all that stuff. And that's why I like to carry a blank black slate rear sight, because it doesn't detract my eye from looking at that. I like to have a fiber optic front sight, because I want my eyes to focus on that, because ultimately that's going to dictate where my shots are going to go, whether up, down, left, or right.
Would you carry that on a carry pistol?
Yeah,
black rears?
My carry pistol actually has somewhat of a night sights, fiber optic sights at the same time with the black rear sight, completely plain.
So a lot of people know that you were a air marshal, which has a high competency for shooting skills. Being on airplanes would require that. 30 yards, 35 yards with the competition stuff. Do you think people should be competent with their carry pistol with their sighting system out to 30 yards off the range? Just, you know, food for thought. Nobody's going to hold you to it except for videoing it forever.
No, so I think having the competency of being able to shoot 30 to 35 yards also always a good thing. So because anything well within that range, if you can shoot and hit things at 30, 35 yards, and you've done it a lot in training, that will give you the confidence to be able to do that out there in the real world. But however, in reality, there's a lot of things that can happen between 35 yards and whatever target you're shooting at. If it's a real world threat, there's people running up and down. There's a lot of things that you can't control. Variability starts to get into play. Really don't want to encourage that, but at the same time, I don't want to discourage it because the guy just did it, 40-yard shot. That's his level of risk appetite and how you could take it. And he was able to take down this kid at the mall, take down, I think it was a 35, 40-yard shot, and was able to take down and stop the threat and basically became a hero. Like this would be a pretty good sight picture when I shoot it like this. If I do this correctly, equal height, equal light, if I do it right there, I should be able to hit it. I'm gonna go hot, I'm gonna fire one shot right there. And so you can see, if you look at the target, you're seeing the shots are somewhere in the center of that target, right? So there's my sights right there, and then so it's the same exact shot that I just fired with equal height, equal light. This right here would basically be enough to be able to hit the same alpha if I keep it like this. So I don't need to be perfect, so I'm gonna fire another one. And basically you can see that my shot is still pretty much on the alpha area by sticking down a little bit on the sight picture. So by now moving it up, I can have also, I don't like it when in the target, the rear sight's taller than my front sight. I usually like to keep my front sight like this because this is gonna dictate where my sight is gonna go and where my shot. So if I'm over here, right here, this is not a perfect sight picture, but that's gonna be good enough to hit the alpha again. It's much harder to do it on a cell phone. The same thing, when I move over here, I can have this sight picture somewhat crooked like this, and I can break that shot. And all of those shots are pretty much in the alpha. It's not, you can't see it on the phone, but you can definitely see it on the zoomed in camera. I think, oh, you can actually somewhat see it and where it's hitting and stuff like that. But none of those were equal light, equal light. So to me, if I go, all right, that's good enough. That's a blurry sight picture. Let me zoom in real quick. There it is, perfect.
Okay.
Yep, there it is. So to me, if it's like this is good enough, fire one. This is good enough, fire two. This is good enough, fire one. This is good enough. That was maybe crooked to the left a little bit, but all of those shots, none of those shots were perfectly on target. Thank you, Mick. None of those shots were perfectly lined on sights, but all of those shots were good enough onto the alpha area, the black square that I had. And I shot that kind of fast. So not necessarily did I have a perfect sight picture. The only time I want somewhat of a perfect sight picture, let's say I go onto the head and I have a lot less margin of error. So now I'm being able to be a little bit more focused on there. It's moving around, as you can see, because I'm talking, but I'm gonna break that shot whenever I feel like it. And that was pretty much almost center on target. So again, if I'm shooting the body, all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna somewhat be center, fire another one, fire another one. That was a little bit high, and you can see it's a little bit on target over there. And then when I go to the head, I'm gonna immediately need to be a little bit more perfect. And you can see I'm not really caring about the side to side as much. I'll make those easy adjustments, but really I'm more concerned about the up and down on target. And right now you can see it moving around. I'll make those adjustments according to my voice because I'm breathing and talking, and then I'll break it the shot from the wall and the prep trigger. And then you can see those two shots on the headshots are pretty good. So those are the big things about sights. It's not necessarily have to be perfect. You can hit and get away with a lot, shooting at about, I don't know, 6 yards or so into the alpha and just messing around with the camera and showing you guys what a good or not good sight picture look like. But it's acceptable. It's good enough. The sights doesn't have to be as perfect. Equal light, equal height doesn't necessarily apply. You just need to have and figure out what's good enough. And good enough is a lot of times really good on target.
Sometimes I think we have a negative connotation with good enough, as in like it's lazy or something, which is an interesting thing. Like I used to work with a guy that made a joke. Georgie, if you check this out, George told me when I was a kid, I fired my own father for saying good enough. and it was like, it was in a situation that required like a great level of care.
Yeah.
We sometimes attach good enough negatively.
Sure, I can see that.
So I think what you're saying is, if it will get the hit, send it.
Send it, yeah.
Stop
I don't have time.
trying to make it better.
Yeah, unless it requires an accurate shot, accuracy, then I'll play with that game. But other than that, I'm gonna send it whenever I send it because time is not my friend. Whenever I see a good shot, a good enough shot, I'm gonna take that shot. So it allows for me to be able to take the shot and still get my points at a very fast rate of fire. Because if I take any longer, the next guy competing against me is gonna take that shot faster than I will, and now I'm losing points. And I can't have that.
Or if you're fighting for your life.
You can't have that neither.
You can't have that neither. Mickey with CarryTrainer.com and Gunfighter Gun Oil. JJ Racaza with the American Dance Troupe. Dude, I bet you have dancing skills.
I did.
You don't anymore?
I don't know if I lost it, but I just don't do it as much.
Like if you were allowed to go out to a club,
I'll tear it up.
Could you?
I will tear it up.
Do you need special shoes, or can
No,
you do it?
I can tear it up.
We're going.
I could tear it up.
How do people find you?
JJRacazaTraining.com or just at JJ Racaza on Instagram. Look for me.
And we are out here on the beautiful CCW Safe Range today, which is not open to the public. Too bad, so sad. But we are here to get you some cool footage with a guy like this. Check them out as well. We'll put a link in the description. This is like one of those Tom Sawyer machines where you get your buddies to start cleaning stuff up because you're like, oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. Don't you want to try? No, you can't try because it's my turn. It's my turn. It's not your turn. And people are like, let me try. Why can't I try? You're like, shut up. I'm doing it. I'm having the brass back. Get off my back.